بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصى نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، ثم الصلاة والسلام على الذي أرسل وبعث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bifina'ik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. قال أبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام: إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا مفسدا ولا ظالما، وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي رسول الله. My revolt is not for ostentation or for corruption or for arrogance or for any other negative reason, but for the sake of reform of the ummah of my grandfather. This is part of a letter that Imam Hussein gave to his half-brother Muhammad ibn Hanafiya when he tried to find out and explore the reason for why Imam was leaving Medina for Mecca and from there wherever he was going. So he tried to explain to him that his action rests on the issue of Islah and reform of the Ummah. By now, as part of the Shia community, we are familiar with what happened at the bank of the river Euphrates in the year 61 after Hijrah. And we consider it to be a monumental event, historical event, unparalleled in history of Islam and possibly history of human being, where Ahlul Bayt, grandson of the Holy Prophet, a number of his own family and disciples, close relatives, they sacrificed their lives for the sake of some core values that we really need to establish and ascertain. What were those core values that Imam Hussein felt that it is necessary for the protection of it or the safeguarding of those values? It is worthy for Imam Hussein and his family to give up their lives. Huge amount of literature exists in our sources debating and discussing exactly the reason why or the factors that led to the uprising. Books, you go to internet, Google or anywhere else and just click or post, ask question regarding the reason for the Karbala uprising. Whether AI or any other sources, they all come out and give you one thing or the other. If we were to look at the event of Karbala, we certainly can define event of Karbala as what we call singular event in our history. Christianity has its own singular event that calls it the crucifixion of Jesus, according to their understanding. That it's a singular event, that before and after is different. we can apply the same thing when it comes to the issue of Karbala, and we say that the Shahada of Imam Hussein and what happened in Karbala became a singular event in which before it and after it is completely different, historically. There are a number of even Western authors that are writing about the incident of the history of Islam, and they all seem to agree and concur that Karbala somehow is a unique event that splits the Muslim community, and the Muslim community divides itself and begins to polarize based on that particular event, and that's the event of Karbala. Jewish lady who converted to Christianity, and she was a nun for a while, Hazelton, that began writing about Islam and so on, has a book on this issue. So these scholars began to investigate what was the reason for the uprising. If we were to focus and search for the reasons for the uprising within what we call the slogans that were available during the whole saga from Medina to Karbala, we come across a number of issues that Imam talks about. Sometimes, such as this letter that he gave to Muhammad ibn Hanafiya, says that the ultimate purpose and the goal of the uprising is the reform of the Muslim community, reform of Ummah. The strategy that is used, sometimes it says, أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. The issue of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy عن المنكر comes. Sometimes refusing the bay'ah to Yazid, مثلي لا يبايع مثله. وعلى الإسلام السلام إذا بلي الإسلام براع مثل يزيد. Islam will come to an end, it ceases to exist if if we create the opportunity for people like Yazid to come to power and take control of the Muslim community. Sometimes Imam says that part of the reason that he is not just refusing the bay'ah. Imam says that the establishment of justice and opposing injustice becomes the primary goal. ألا ترون إن الحق لا يعمل به وأن الباطل لا ينهى عنه. And when the society gets to the degree where it doesn't really care about the issue of justice and injustice, people like me, he talks about himself, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, is obligated to stand up to change the society and the drifting that has taken place and bring the society back to its original shape. Now, from when did the Muslim society or Ummah began to drift? It's one of those critical issues that scholars have debated. No doubt, if we go to the early history of Islam, that Islam considered itself to be a moral and ethical revolution to change the corrupt and decadent and oppressive lifestyle or social structure that existed before it. Islam came to create an ideal society or a real society that not only stood for justice, but all opposed injustice as well. Justice in its absolute totality, not just issue of political justice, economic justice. Justice in its absolute totality. And because the Jahiliyyah community, the concept or the tradition of moral responsibility, moral accountability was not part of their culture. So Islam comes But instead, they had their own tribal structure, tribal moral being a supreme understanding. But Islam comes to change this society that, according to verses of the Holy Quran, says that it is dead, and to provide life, and gives it life and resurrect it and bring it back from death. The Holy Prophet struggled during 23 years period of himself, his struggle or his prophecy during Mecca and Medina, both, to change this society. Unfortunately, after his death, this ummah, this society, drifted immediately back to the old Jahiliyyah or tribal mentality immediately. If you go back to the early history, the fact that Saqifa was a small place used during Jahiliyyah as a place for consultation of the leaders of the tribals, and it was shut during the life of the Holy Prophet. They organized their meeting in the same place that during the Jahiliyyah time they used to organize their meeting, is an indication of the drift that is going to take place, the significance. And so the society that the Holy Prophet had struggled so much for keeping it on the right path began to decline and diminish. The moral responsibility went out. By the time Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi gains the Khilafah and people swear allegiance to him, in Khutbah 16th of Nahj al-Balagha, Imam says, ألا وإن بليتكم قد عادت كهيئتها يوم بعث الله نبيه. The struggle that the Holy Prophet had to deal with, and the mindset of Jahiliyyah that the Holy Prophet had to deal with, has come back pervasively to take control of the social structure, but with a difference. Those days, people worship idols. Now you stand before Kaaba and you say Allahu Akbar. You do Salat al-Jum'ah, you do Salat al-Jama'ah, and everything else. But mindset, the outlook, the worldview, everything else that existed before, it has come to dictate. Ala wa inna baliyatukum, the struggle, everything else that we had to deal with early history of Islam has come to dominate the mindset of the society. And he says, if I have to deal with it, I will have to turn the social structure on its head. It's so pervasive that the society has to be changed and turned around to be able to deal with the what we call the corruption and the deviation that had taken place. Now imagine 20 years later, if during the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen he complains and laments that Jahiliyyah has come to take control of the mindset of the society. The moral principle, the spiritual principle, and everything else people have deviated from. 20 years later or so, after the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, in around the end of the year 60 after Hijrah, what would be the status of the Muslim community at that time? No wonder Imam Hussein uses the language to describe the social structure and people, the way they behave, الناس عبيد الدنيا. It's a very stern and strong language, describing the people of the time. الناس عبيد الدنيا والدين لعق على ألسنتهم يحوطونه ما درت معايشهم فإذا محسوا بالبلاء قل الديان. People are slave of the worldly glamour. They pay lip service to deen and way of life that the Holy Prophet came and with its own moral and ethical principle. They pay lip service to it so long as that deen and faith does not make a headway into their comfort zone. As soon as that faith begins to dictate and criticize them and say this lifestyle that you have is not the ideal lifestyle, is not the moral lifestyle, is not the ethical lifestyle, قَلَّ الدَّيَّانُونَ, very few people remain actively engaged in faith. We need to reflect on it. How much attachment do we have to this glamour and the worldly life? And how much deen in this, when we use the phrase of deen, we mean a way of life. A way of life that faith prescribed for us. How much of this way of life we are prepared to adhere to, or we cherry picking. We have only select, as Quran says, نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض. Allah says something, I reserve the right to disagree with it. Interpret my own lifestyle accordingly. So this is one of the fundamental problems. Worldly glamour that the people of the time were attached to was the main obstacle. Last night in the Farsi program, I tried to explain the relationship or the dynamic between khawas and awam in the social structure. When people begin to prioritize and give priority to the material life against the ethical and moral principle, that's the beginning of the decline. Naturally, we can talk about how the Muslim community or the Muslim Ummah deviated immediately after the life of the Holy Prophet and what happened to them after Saqifah. I'm not going to get involved in the issue of Khilafah. I just want to make something. The scholars maintain that the beginning of the corruption, irrespective of what happened during Saqifah, starts around 6 years or 7 years after the demise of the Holy Prophet. When a group of what we call Sahabas become the bourgeoisie of their own lifestyle. What do I mean by it? They come openly, say, we supported the Holy Prophet, we were with the Holy Prophet in battles and so on. We want to be treated differently from everybody else. And our share of Baytul Mal to be given more. And that is exactly what second Khalif started, giving people to people like Talha, Zubair, and Abdul Rahman ibn Auf and others, more than others. Quraysh against Muhajirin, Ansar, Quraysh, Arab, non-Arab, etc. So we see that beginning of the drift taking place when these people come in and ask for something unique from the established power. How do Ahlul Bayt, as they go through the challenges of in their life, behave? This is one of the critical issues. Shaykh Saad, Muhammad Baqir Saad, has a book called Ahlul Bayt, تعدد الأدوار ووحدة الهدف. The Ahlul Bayt, they have multiplicity of strategy, but their goal in their life is one. The protection of Islam is their main goal, but they may have to react to the forcing circumstance in a different style than others. The goal of the first three Imam, starting with Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi, then Imam Hassan, a short period, and then Imam Hussein, was to see if they can use force to change the dynamic of power that exists in their life, in their society. And they failed. Why? Because what we call today the political base did not exist. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi, in short saying in Nahj al-Balagha, says, we have a right, I have a right as Imam and as a Khalifa. If that right is given to me, then I will be able to lead the society to its perfection and ideal state. But if I were to be denied that right, people are not prepared to stand up for it, then he uses the metaphor of riding the camel on the back. the roughest part of the riding of the camel. Life becomes extremely difficult for the Imam and has to react to the events. All of them had the protection of Islam in as their ultimate goal. But the strategy that they chose is critical. Imam, during 4 years of, 8 months of his Khilafah, constantly from one battle to another. Why? Because people attached themselves deviated from the right path. Morality and spirituality went out of the way, and they became extremely attached to material life to the point that they were prepared to sacrifice the faith for the sake of material attachment. Naturally, they are not going to get anywhere with such people. After this group, after the 10th of Ashura, Imam Zain al-Abidin begins a totally different strategy. The strategy is that there is no hope with the existing society to be able to deliver the message with their help. We need to create that political base. And how does he start? By buying slaves, educating them, and then sending them around to propagate Islam, the values of Ahlul Bayt, the concept of morality and everything else. It is one of the critical issues that we really need to, during the nights, pay attention to as we search for the factors that led ultimately to the uprising. The goal of all of them, I must repeat, the goal of all of them is the same, the protection of Islam. We see Amir al-Mu'mineen goes through different phases in his life. At the early part, he decides to be patient and wait. And in Khutbah Shaqshaqiyya, if you read it, he talks about the reason for this. I found myself facing the reality of either to stand up and try to get what is mine and risk the destruction of Islam and Muslim community that the Holy Prophet worked so hard for its well-being, or to swallow this hard or poison pill and remain silent, waiting for the right moment and the opportune moment to come. Imam Hassan did the same thing. During the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen in Kufa, he complains that why is it that Muawiyah has such a loyal, obedient people group, but I don't have even. I wish Muawiyah comes and takes 10 of you and gives one of his team to me. بِاجْتِمَاعِهِمْ عَلَى بَاطِلِهِمْ وَتَفَرُّقِكُمْ عَنْ حَقِّكُمْ. You have the best leader. Amir al-Mu'mineen is there, but you don't listen to Amir al-Mu'mineen. I tell you we need to go to fight. You say it's hot. Let's wait until the weather gets better. When the weather gets better, cold is too cold, let's wait for a little bit more. لَقَدْ مُلِئْتُمْ قَلْبِيَ قَرْحًا. This is the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. In one of the khutbah, I believe khutbah 25, he complains that out of the entire Muslim geographical boundary, I have left with Kufa alone. Muawiyah has taken everything. Why? It's not because I'm incapable of leadership, because you people don't listen. Material life. We want to live. Every time the Imam said something, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we want to live. This attachment to life, to material life, to the glamour of life, position, wealth, and everything else is something that led to the deviation of the Muslim community, that Imam Hussein thought that he will be able, at least part of the policy, he will be able to correct and change the deviation. One thing that I want to remind everyone before I conclude the English section, as I go through and explain various reasons that are outlined by scholars, whether it's establishment of Islamic governments, or whether it's Amr bil Ma'ruf and everything else, it should not be interpreted that I'm supporting one view or the other. I'm just presenting these ideas that have been debated in various books and articles, and for you to go and read them and see whether this opinion is correct or it's not correct. It's something that we need to deal with. Let's move very quickly, as the time we are running out, to the Farsi section. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. آیه است در قرآن سوره توبه آیه 24 إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا. اگر در لیست اولویت‌های خودتون یه چنین تفکری رو دارید که مسائل مادی یا مسائل خانوادگی یا مسائل دیگر اینها اولویت دارن برای شما و در مبانی حتی حاضرید مبانی دینی رو در مرحله دوم قرار بدید و این مسئله ها رو در مرحله اول قرار بدید، صبر کنید و ببینید نتیجه چیه. عده‌ای از علما و مفسرین گفتن این تربصوا یعنی صبر کنید و خودتون نتیجه عمل خودتون را در زمان زندگی خودتون خواهید دید. یعنی شما صبر کنید و اگر این دین رو ازش دفاع نکنید میبینید روز به روز دین از بین میره، حسین و حسینی ها به قتلگاه میرن و بالاخره قدرت های ظالم میاد و بر شما حکومت میکنه و شما رو به عنوان برده مجبورید ازشون اطاعت کنید. معاویه بعد از صلح امام حسن وارد کوفه میشه، بلا فاصله میره برای منبر، میگه ایها الناس، من با حسن نجنگیدم که بخوام شما رو مجبور کنم برید نماز بخونید یا روزه بگیرید. شما دارید نماز میخونید یا روزه میگیرید. من جنگیدم که بر شما مسلط بشم و شما به عنوان برده من باشید. هرچی من بگم شما بگید بله. در نتیجه همون منبری رو که امیرالمومنین بالای این منبر میرفت و سخنرانی میکرد، معاویه میاد ازش استفاده میکنه و میگه من میخوام چون برگردم به شام نمیتونم صبر کنم تا روز جمعه، در روز چهارشنبه نماز جمعه رو میخونیم و من از اینجا میریم بیرون. و این بوصفت هایی که تا دیروز با علی ایستاده بودن کاملا سمعا و طاعه اومدن روز چهارشنبه نماز جمعه خوندن. من یادم میاد سال 2003 بود به نظرم، یکی از آقایون مرکزی، حالا نمیخوام اسمشو بیارم، در لس آنجلس با من تماس گرفتن، گفتن آقای کازرونی ما میخوایم شما رو دعوت کنیم بیایید برای یه 3-4 روزی سخنرانی، در ضمن ما میخوایم نماز جمعه هم برقرار بکنیم. مسئله نیست، چند تا شرط داریم ما. یکی این که نماز جمعه رو ما میخوایم روز یک شنبه برقرار بکنیم. چرا؟ برای اینکه خب جمعه روز تعطیلی عمومی اون موقع بوده و الان روز یک شنبه روز تعطیلی ماست، لذا میخوایم نماز جمعه رو بذاریم روز تعطیل. یه 2 شرط دیگه هم ما داریم. شما در طول سخنرانی هاتون اسم از این که مشروب حرام فروختنش یا گوشت خوک حرام فروختنش رو نیارید. چرا؟ برای اینکه اکثر اونهایی که به مرکز ما کمک مالی میکنن درآمدشون یا از فروش گوشت خوک یا از فروش مشروب. این جامعه امروز ماست. اون وقت ما توقع داریم با یک چنین جامعه کهکشان‌ها رو بگیریم. مسئله اصطلاح خواص که ما دربارشون بحث میکنیم، اینا یکی از مسئولیت‌های مهمی رو دارن در زندگی. ببینید امام حسین 1 سال قبل از اینکه معاویه بمیره در عرفات خیمه بزرگی رو میزنه و از خاندان بنی هاشم و فامیلی های خودش دعوت میکنه، میگه بیایید بگردید در میان مردم، ببینید اونهایی که ظاهر و صلاحن و زهد و تقوا دارن و از صحابه پیامبرن هر کی هست، اینا رو جمع کنید بیان توی این خیمه. مردم جمع میشن. امام براشون یه سخنرانی کوتاهی میکنه، میگه که من چند تا نکته رو به شما گوشزد میکنم، اگر من دروغ میگم یا غلط میگم به من بگید اشتباه کردید، اما اگر درست میگم شما بگید اللهم بلا و بعد بهتون میگم که چه کار بکنید. گفتن باش. اولین چیزی رو که سوال کرد ازشون خواست، آیا یادتون ره در زمان حیات پیامبر که عقد برادری رو بین خودش و علی بست؟ گفتن بله. گفتش که انت اخی و انا اخوک فی الدنیا و الاخره اللهم بلا. گفت اللهم وال من والا و عاد من عادا اللهم بلا. آیا یادتون میاد که پیامبر گفت اونهایی که علی رو دشمن داشته باشن و من رو دوست داشته باشن دروغ میگن؟ چرا؟ چون علی نفس منه، روح منه. شما نمیتونید من رو دوست داشته باشید و علی رو دوست نداشته باشید. گفتن بله. گفت خیلی خوب، حالا که ما با هم توافق کردیم، شما این مسئله رو وردارید ببرید به بین جامعه خودتون تقسیم کنید، بهشون بگید، اطلاع بدید، روشنشون بکنید درباره مبانی اهل بیت. 1 سال بعد معاویه میمیره. در تاریخ نویسان میگن در اون خیمه 700 نفر، 500 نفر از تابعین و 200 نفر از صحابه بودن. معاویه میمیره، یزید میاد سر قدرت. این 700 تا کجا رفتن و چیشون؟ که 72 تاشون فقط زنده موندن و اومدن، یعنی روحشون زنده بود و اینا اومدن در کربلا شرکت کردن. بقیه چی شد؟ این یکی از مسائل مهمی است که ما در برخوردهامون بایستی بهش حساس بشیم و ببینیم که چه شکلی حب جاه و مقام ما رو از اون راهی که بایستی بریم از راه به در میبره. طلحه و زبیر، علت اشکال طلحه و زبیر به علی چی بود؟ 2 تا مسئله بود. وقتی که اومدن با علی نشستن، به علی رو بیعت کردن، این مسئله نیست، اما بعدش اومدن پلوی علی گفتن آقا ما 2 تا خواسته داریم. خواسته اولمون اینه که اون امتیازاتی که در دوره خلافت دوم و خلافت سوم به ما داده شد ادامه داده بشه. علی میگه که آقا رو چه مبنایی؟ میگه برای اینکه ما صحابه بودیم، با علی با پیامبر کمک کردیم، رفتیم فلان کردیم. گفت که یعنی شما بیشتر از من کار کردید؟ گفتن نه. گفت من که بیشتر از شما کار کردم، حق من با حق یک کسی دیگه یکسانه. عقیل وقتی که میاد به علی میگه که آقا یه خورده دیگه به من، دعوتش میکنه توی خونه که فقر و بدبختی زندگیش رو ببینه، چی از علی میخواد؟ یه قرص نون اضافه که بتونه به بچه هاش بده. آتش میذاره توی دستش، میگه که من چه شکلی جوابی در روز قیامت بدم. سوال دوم میگن آقا به اصطلاح زعامت یا امارت بصره و یمن رو بین ما تقسیم کن. علی میگه من خلیفه وقتم، انتخاب امیر برای یک منطقه بایستی روی مصلحت‌های عامه باشه. در صورتی که مصلحت عامه وجود نداشته باشه من نمیتونم چنین کاری بکنم، بذارید دربارش فکر بکنم. دیدن با علی نمیشه. با علی خودش میگه که حق برای من رفیقی نگذاشت. این یه مسئله مهمه. حق برای من رفیقی نگذاشت. تا چه اندازه ما میتونیم از حق دفاع کنیم در طول زندگیمون و بر علیه باطل؟ این یکی از مسائل مهم عاشوراست که انشاءالله در شبهای آینده دنبال میکنیم. بذارید همینجا ختم کنیم که انشاءالله برنامه ها ادامه پیدا کنه. پروردگارا و مقربان درگاهت قسمت میدهیم که ما را ببخش و بیامرز. عاقبت ما را ختم به خیر بفرما. ما را کمک کن تا حسینی بشیم. روح شهدا و اموات ما را شاد بفرما. فرج امام زمان را تعجیل بفرما. بالنبی و آله. الفاتحه مع الصلوات.
خیلی ممنون حاجی. تشکر. Thank you. There are a couple of questions from last night. We have not received anything tonight, but we have time for one question. Was Omar from Bani Umayyah? Also, how much the Prophet era changed the hate between Bani Umayyah and Bani Hashim, since Muawiyah was one of the Prophet writers?
Could you start with the first question, please?
Was Omar from Bani Umayyah? I think this is coming from your previous lecture.
Abu Bakr and Omar, if you go back to the structure, the tribal structure of Quraysh, they were part of the fringe tribes of Quraysh. They were not part of the main tribe of Quraysh. And this is why immediately after these two taking power, Bani Umayyah struggled to turn power and bring power back to Bani Umayyah, and Uthman represented their interest. So Umar and Abu Bakr were not part of the Bani Umayyah or somehow, because they are part of fringe part of Quraysh, they are somehow related, far-fetched, but it doesn't mean that they were part of the main adversaries that were struggling for power between Bani Umayyah and Bani Hashim. What was the second question?
The second part was that also how much the Prophet era changed the hate between Bani Umayyah and Bani Hashim, since Muawiyah was one of the Prophet's writers.
One of the Prophet's
writers. I don't know what what was the meaning of the... Perhaps one of the followers, for example, one of the Kataban, for example.
Well, Bani Umayyah, after they struggled to derail Islam by what we call the military mean, and ultimately they were defeated in the victory of Mecca. They really, according to a hadith that we have, they really did not accept Islam. They pretended to be Yabnat Tulaqa, that Sayyida Zainab Salamullah alayha in Sham talks about it, is people who really, they accepted Islam, but they only to save their skin. They were not part of the true Muslims. So Muawiyah was part of that particular group. I need more clarification from the person who posed the question as exactly what the question is, to be able to discuss further. Inshallah, if Brother Khaydi, you can find out from the person that gave you the question exactly what is it that they want, and then inshallah we can deal with it tomorrow night.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.